Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and especially you guests, welcome to the holiday party. I'm really glad that you could come here tonight, so maybe we can demonstrate to you why it is that we love the Greater Des Moines Toastmasters Club. And at the same time, maybe we can thank you for the support that you give us throughout the year. Because, you know, being a Toastmaster takes a big commitment. We're here every week, and it is a lot of work, and we thank you for the help that you give us at home and things like that. Now, what I want to talk to you about tonight is a common question that I get over and over at Toastmasters, and I thought maybe I could pay the group back a little bit. But the question I get most often is, what was it like growing up Carrie Richardson? And I get it. I mean, if I were you, I'd want to know too. But I know what you really mean when you're asking the question. What you're asking is, what was it like growing up with Dale Richardson as your father? You see, my dad always was and always will be a provider, a Christian, a mentor, a Toastmaster, and a family man. But my dad is also a wee bit batshit crazy and a whole lot funny. And that's what I want to talk to you about tonight. See, growing up, my dad, he always had quick wit. I mean, I'm sure you've noticed this in table topics. And one of his witty abilities is to take anyone's last name and turn it into the punchline of a joke. Now, when we were growing up, my mother, her maiden name is New. So anytime my relatives would come over to visit, my dad would meet them at the front door and he'd say, "Betty, come quick, it's bad news." Now, we had some favorite friends of ours, their name was Wasted. And my parents liked to play cards with them. And every time we'd get ready to go to their house to play cards, my dad would say, "Betty, you need to call them and make sure they're home. We wouldn't want to waste any gas." Now, growing up as Dale's son put a lot of pressure on me to be funny. And I had to take a lot of risks when I was young. Now, when I was in 4th grade, I snuck into school early one day. And I put this bloody fake hand in my teacher to death. And everything was going great. We did the Pledge of Allegiance. She sat down to give us her lesson. When she opened the door, she screamed and she ran out into the hall. And I got up and I immediately high-fived everyone in the class because I knew I was king comedy for the day. And I was going to get away with it, but one of the kids cracked during the interrogation. And there I was down in the principal's office. And there he was wanting to rescind my day in school. But I knew I wasn't worried. Because I knew once he called my dad was going to think it was so funny, he'd probably come down and get me and we'd go out for ice cream. But much to my chagrin, my mom showed up at the school. And I have to tell you, to this day, my mom still does not have as good a sense of humor as my dad. Now, education was very important to my dad. It was never if, but it was always when I was going to college. And my dad let me pick my school. I picked Iowa State University, and he was okay with that. He never really showed. He never really got into the in-state rivals. But as I get older, and I think back, I think, you know, my dad, he did kind of have this fetish with pizza delivery and trailer parks. So I suspect all along he was a Hawkeye fan. When I was making my plans for school, and I approached my dad about maybe upgrading my car. I said, "Dad, you know, I'll be driving back and forth to school sometimes. And I really don't think that the son of a 7-Up executive should be driving around a piece of junk." Well, my dad listened to me and he said, "Carrie, I have a proposal for you." He said, "If you go to school the first semester and you keep your hair short and you get a B average, we'll talk about that car when you come home on winter break." So I did my finals and I came home and I was sitting in the kitchen with my mom and my dad came in. The first thing he did was he walked up to me and he ran his fingers through my ever-growing hair because I hadn't cut it since that conversation. And he said, "Well, college boy, how are those grades going?" I said, "Dad, I'm a college man now, and I think you need to know a couple of things. I said, first of all, C's get degrees. And second of all, Jesus and all of his disciples had long hair. And if that's okay with Jesus, Dad, that's okay with me. Can we go car shopping now? My dad gave me one of these. And he said, Kerry, I find it hard to believe that all the studying you did, you missed these obvious things. He said, you see, a C, son, is the best of the worst and the worst of the best. And I find it really hard to believe that you didn't notice through all that studying that Jesus and the disciples, they walked everywhere they went. Now, Toastmaster, I wish we had more time tonight. Because the stories of Dale could just go on and on and on. But I would like to, and I do have time for one more. And I want to tell you about the first time I ever came home late. You see, I was a sophomore in high school. And it was getting towards the end of my sophomore year, and the older kids invited me to go to a party. And I really wanted to go. And my parents really didn't want me to go, so finally, after all the whining and everything I did, my dad said, that's fine. But you have to be home at midnight. And I didn't argue because you don't argue with him. And it was the greatest party. I mean, I adapted to those older kids, and I had so many firsts that night. And before you knew it, my friends were dropping me off in the front of the house. And I was standing looking at the house. And it was just shortly before 3 a.m. And I didn't know what I was going to do, so I just walked up to the door, and I opened it, and I crept up the stairs. And about halfway down the hall, the cuckoo clock went off. And I knew that that clock and that door sound was going to wake my dad up, and I was going to be in trouble. So once the clock hit its third cuckoo, I cuckooed 9 more times. When I woke up in the morning, I wasn't sure whether or not I'd gotten away with it. So I crept down the hall because I knew my parents would be in the kitchen. And I got about halfway down, and I could hear my dad talking. And he said, Betty, we need to get a new cuckoo clock. She said, oh, why, Dale? I thought that one worked fine. He said, well, Kerry came home last night at midnight like we asked him to. And that clock cuckooed 11 times and threw up. Mr. Toastmaster.